Hey everyone, my name is Cole Pate, and today I'm going to be talking about conflict resolution, what it is, why it's important, and how to do it. So, what is conflict resolution? Well, my definition is conflict resolution is the act of solving a problem or issue between you and another person or a small group of people in a healthy and mature and respective and responsible way. Why is conflict resolution important? Well, it's important because if you spend any sort of extended amount of time interacting with other humans, you're going to have conflict with them. It's just going to happen. And so knowing how to appropriately resolve conflict with other people will help keep the relationships that you have healthy. And I'm not talking about romantic relationships necessarily. It includes that, but I'm also talking about like friendships or relationships with your classmates or coworkers or teachers or parents or literally anyone you interact with. You have a relationship with them. The relationship is just different depending on who they are. But conflict resolution is super, super helpful and necessary to help prevent issues in those relationships and to keep them healthy and in good standing. So how do you do conflict resolution? Well, I want to start off by saying that this is talking about conflict and not abuse, okay? Now, usually, conflict 9 times out of 10 is not one-sided. There's usually some communication error between both parties, and it's not either just you or just the other person. So what you want to do is you want to go directly to the person you have conflict with. You don't want to gossip about other people, or you don't want to talk bad about them behind their back. You want to go straight to that person you have conflict with. And then you want to start by sincerely apologizing to them. Say something like, I'm sorry for not communicating this better to you, or I'm sorry for not bringing it up sooner, or I'm sorry for X, Y, or Z. What you don't want to do is you don't want to say, I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry if. If you say, I'm sorry, but, or I'm sorry if, that makes your apology conditional and renders it insincere. So you definitely don't want to do that. So you want to start off by apologizing to the other person. Then you want to bring up the issue with them. You want to say something about what happened, right? But stick to the facts. You don't want to talk about the issue and put something in their mouth or put a motive behind what they did or said that wasn't true. So you want to say, you want to say something like, you did this. You, for instance, maybe the other person was late to a meeting that you were hosting. You want to say, you were late to the meeting, and that made me feel bad. That made me feel like you didn't respect my time, or you didn't respect the meeting. You don't want to say, you were late because you don't respect the meeting, right? That's putting a motive on them that's not necessarily true. But if you say what you felt, and you say, I felt this, I felt that, then it's on how you perceived it, not in necessarily what they intended for it. Because most often, the person that you have conflict with isn't going to want to purposefully have conflict with you. They're not going to want to purposefully say something rude to you or say something inconsiderate. Usually it just comes off that way and they didn't mean for it to. So that's another huge reason that conflict resolution is important, because usually it's just misunderstandings. Or usually there's communication error and people don't understand that what they said or did was upsetting to the other person, and they don't know it if you don't bring it up with them. So after you apologize and after you bring up the issue with them, that opens up an avenue for a healthy conversation to ensue, so that you can have a good conversation with that person to further resolve the conflict and hopefully learn from each other and move on. Another thing you want to make sure during this conversation and when you're explaining the conflict is you don't want to bring up the past. If you've known this person for a long time, if you've had issues with them for a long time, you don't want to bring up past things. You want to talk about what just happened recently. So, for instance, if that person had been missing meetings for the past 3 months, or if they'd been late to meetings for the past 3 months, you don't want to go to them and say, hey, you were late to these meetings for the past 3 months. Then that puts it on you, meaning you should have brought it up a heck of a lot sooner than you did. You want to say, hey, you were late to the meeting last week, and then explain how it made you feel and all the other things prior. So you don't want to bring up the past. And remember, this is a conflict resolution is you and the other person versus the problem, not you versus the other person, right? You don't want to argue with the other person, because that just hurts your relationship and doesn't fix the conflict, doesn't address the issues. So what if you go through conflict resolution and you try multiple times and the other person just really isn't doing, like they're not reciprocating, they're not wanting to resolve any conflict, it's just really not working. So what happens then? Well, If that's the case and you've tried multiple times with them and it's not working, then bring in another person. Bring in a friend or another coworker or a boss or a parent or teacher or staff member or pastor, some sort of authority that could help maybe act as a mediator between the two of you, and see if that helps and see if you can further resolve the conflict that way. If that still doesn't work, then you're just going to have to forgive them and move on. You're going to have to move past that. You don't have to interact with that person anymore. You don't have to try and work with them. But if they're not going to help you resolve the conflict, then there's nothing you can do. You've done all you can, and you just need to try and move on the best way that is. So when do you do conflict resolution? Well, it's pretty cut and dry when you do and when you don't. If you have an issue with someone, and it's something that you can't overlook, no matter how big or how small, then you need to do conflict resolution. If it's a big issue, but you can overlook it, then overlook it and move on. If it's a small issue, but you can't overlook it, for instance, if you're living with someone and they don't put away the dishes after they've washed them, or they just leave them in the sink or something, and that's something you really can't look past, and it's really annoying to you, then you need to bring it up. But if it's something that you can overlook, go for it. So that's it. That's conflict resolution. I hope this helped. I hope you learned something. And this isn't for one type of person or one group of people. It's helpful for everyone, and everyone can benefit from knowing how to resolve conflict in a healthy and effective way. Again, I hope this was effective, and I'll see you all in another video.